Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 25th edition of On Data and Design. My name is Darian. I'm the co-founder from Studio in Basel, and I'm the co-author of the book Visualizing Complexity. And I'm the initiator of On Data and Design. And tonight I'm the host. Today we will have three talks on data and art. And he joined. It was a surprising moment. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to Adrien Segal, Tiziana Alocci, and Lev Manovich, who just joined. I'm super happy that he
Sorry,
managed to join us. That's okay.
I have this like
Yeah,
about 30% of my Zooms and meetings. I always miscalculate the time, so I apologize. But
good.
anyway, I
No worries.
just wanted to keep you a bit like a bit like in suspense. So.
That's good. That's good. We are now online, so people see us on YouTube.
Okay,
All our speakers will have, so you will have 20 minutes for your talks. And during the
awesome.
talks, we will collect the questions in Slido. The link is below. And after the talks, we will have a discussion based on the questions you ask us.
Mm-hmm.
One last thing, we will ask the other speakers who are not speaking currently to mute so that kind of the video from the speaker is visible in the corner. And yes, and I'm very happy that last time we had our one and first community viewing. That means that there were people joining in Basel and looking at the YouTube live stream and having afterwards fun and beer. And we have that this time in 3 locations. So we have that in London and we have that in Lucerne. So in the discussion round, we will have a short video entrance into the places where people are now gathering, and we will connect to them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and
Excellent.
now I would say, Adrien, would you share your story with us? You have 20 minutes, and we will mute our screen, so you're free to present.
Wonderful. Thank you, Darjan. So my name is Adrien Segal. I live in Oakland, California, and I'm gonna start with this image because I visited this site a long time ago when I was getting my undergraduate degree, and it's just off the coast of San Francisco, very close to the Golden Gate Bridge. And a lot of my work starts with a really personal, kind of intimate experience in the landscape. And visiting this site really inspired me to start looking more at the tides. This is the site of a former bathhouse where they harness the tides for recreation, and now it's ruins that are slowly being taken back by the ocean. So in my undergraduate degree, I had a degree in furniture design, but I started working with data way back then. And this is a visualization of what data tracking the tides looks like. I found an open source resource for tide data, this historic tide database which is tracked by a government agency. So this is the water level taken every 6 minutes for a full 24-hour period. And you can also then map that into a simple chart. So for every place in the world, the tides look a little bit different. In San Francisco, we have 2 highs and 2 lows per day. And then learning more about the tides, they're influenced by the gravitational pull of the sun and the moon in relation to the Earth. So the cycle repeats monthly, around every 29 to 30 days. And I was learning how to build things. I'm a fabricator in my background. I work in a wood shop primarily. And in this case, I took a full cycle of daily tide charts and hand bent them in steel, and then was organizing ways to represent this data as a physical object. So in this case, the finished piece looks like this. There's 2 variables of time. So from the front view, you can see the daily tide chart. And then I'm thinking a lot, not just about the data, but also about the object in space, how light interacts with the piece, what shadows will be cast. In this case, there's a walnut frame that I fabricated, and then that holds up all of these metal bars that show the tide charts. From the side view, it's also the dimension of time, but the full month. And then here's an installation view of that work along with some other data works by other people at a show a while back called Data Deluge in Texas. So that was the beginning of my data, kind of diving into data from a kind of an adjacent different field in furniture design. But I am very much interested in some of the same things now. So jumping forward, this piece was installed this last year in 2022 in Alameda, California. And it's revisiting tides, but from a very different perspective, and also in a large permanently installed public artwork. So I was still working with these undulations and flows in nature, but with less of a direct literal translation of tide data, and still working in the realm of the body and inviting interaction in physical space with physical materials. This is an image of the fabrication of this piece. It was made from cast concrete by a specialized company not far from where the site is, and here's the finished sculpture. So just to cover data physicalization, because it's sort of a strange term, also known as data sculpture. It is a physical artifact whose geometry or material properties are encoded with data. So many of you are probably familiar with the variables for visual encoding: shape, size, value, texture, color, orientation, and 2D position. And for sculpture, we now can layer in material and form, which are really the heart of sculpture and my interest in creating art. So material knowledge is of the utmost fascination to me. I love working with material. I love working with my body, and really thinking about how material objects and artifacts carry meaning across time and across generations. I just want to point out two books that came out last year as well, both about physical data, making with data with Routledge, and making data materializing digital information through Bloomsbury. So both of those feature some of my work and a bunch of other works along these lines. I'm not the first person who came up with this. Looking back throughout history, other cultures have worked with physical representations of data, the Incan quipu, which was a knot tying color encoded system, and then the Mesopotamian clay tokens, which were used for counting commodities. And then if you're interested in learning more about other physicalizations of data, I'm going to direct you to dataviz.org. It's a really wonderful online archive. And also just nature has this really wonderful, beautiful way through things like tree rings and ice cores and of tracking information about the climate and changes in the landscape in natural forms. So I'm immensely inspired by natural forms, environmental forces, temporal changes, perceptual experience, and then this idea of how we take data into information and then knowledge to wisdom. So thinking of knowledge as a more expansive way of knowing that include the body, the mind, also emotion and spirit. So something like this photo on the left, learning that the Colorado River, which is the largest river in the Western United States, doesn't hit the ocean anymore because we use all the water before it gets there, leads me to do research into what information we have about what water is used for. So the graph on the right is showing what all water in the United States is used for between the years 1950 and 2000. And that yellow section shows that almost half of our water goes to power generation. So my process of physical building involves cutting a lot of wiggly shapes, sometimes with a bandsaw, sometimes with a CNC, stacking them up into a lamination and then carving them all back with a lot of abrasive tools, and then resolving and refining the shape into a really finished, smooth surface that invites touch. Sculpture is an aesthetic language I use to bridge the gap between reason and emotion. That's kind of the heart of my artist statement. So when I see a data set, I understand why it's important to track nature that way, but I also am sad that it loses all of the beauty and emotional connection I have to the feeling of being like deeply in snow. So I will source as much information as I can, in this case from a site in the Sierra Nevadas of California, showing a full year of snowfall information. So I accumulated 31 years of this data. You can see there's quite a variable amount of water in the snowpack from year to year. And I'll play around with how to organize this in space to really look at the long-term changes and trends, and then go through this painstaking process of fabrication where every piece is a different size based on the data carving back. And in this case, it's a fairly overtly functional piece where I made a cabinet of drawers, drawing a parallel between how we store things in our homes and in drawers and cabinets, but then how nature has a really beautiful way of storing water in snowpack, and then it's released seasonally. I will often partner directly with scientific organizations. So in this case, I was provided these LiDAR maps showing the path of a river in Oregon by the USGS Water Oregon Science Center. And then once I have an idea of what the data is doing, I can quickly mock it up in a clay form, which is what you're seeing on the left. And then I go back through and painstakingly apply as accurately to the data shapes that I can cut out and carve back. So here's the CNC router cutting those forms and stack laminating them, and then me carving them back with a die grinder. And then here's the finished piece showing 15 years of the movements of this particular river in Oregon. So when we think of art, we tend to think of art objects, and this is a mistake. So I've been very influenced by this book, Art as Experience by John Dewey, and he really believed that art is this connection between the doing or the making and the experience of the person creating that work, and then what he called undergoing or perceiving, and the experience of people who are seeing the work. And art is what connects those two experiences across time. So we need to stop thinking about artworks as objects and start thinking about them as triggers for experience. I borrowed this graphic from Valentina, who presented with on data and design in the previous iteration. So what I really love about this graphic is that it really shows that data is this quote unquote objective, collection of information about the world. But then to transcend that into knowledge and wisdom, it must have a subjective viewer. And so this idea that objectivity and subjectivity are separate doesn't really work. I think it goes back to the Enlightenment when we had Descartes, who believed that to obtain the best results, emotions must be kept out. So rational processing must be unencumbered by the passions, or otherwise known as emotions. And I think that doesn't work so well when you want to experience the world fully and respond emotionally to what's happening around us. Western science has stressed this attitude of objectivity, in which it appears that natural phenomena, including the human organism, are nothing but mechanisms. But as I just said, subject and object cannot be separated, and we and our surroundings are the process of a unified field. So here we're looking at a wildfire map that shows how the Rim Fire, which happened in 2013 up near Yosemite National Park, grew and expanded over time. And then the reality of what a wildfire looks like from the ground. And I want to marry these two things back together and then ask some bigger questions about why this is happening in the world. And if you've ever been in a place that's being affected by wildfire, it is a profound experience to not be able to go outside because the air is so terrible. So when these events happen, they are massive forces. And you start to actually, the scent of wildfire starts to affect you, sort of have trauma over time. So I've gone out and I've collected wildfire wood, charcoal, and made ink from that, and done a series of drawings based on some of these progression maps where I hand ink a very complex form and then shade them using the charcoal. And then I've also got a series of sculptures that are part of this wildfire series. And the role of the artist is really to ask questions, not to answer them. So I'm not telling people how they should be living or what decisions we need to make, but I want to know how this happens and why. And is this really a natural disaster as it's often talked about in the media? And if you start to look at the data, only 1% of wildfires are caused by natural factors. Most of the rest of them are human interactions. Arson is a huge one. And then we're building homes right next to the forest that traditionally needs to burn. So burning is really healthy for a forest ecosystem, but it's very damaging when we build a house there and it's destroyed. So some of the three-dimensional sculptures I've made in this series actually started in, I think, 2013 was when I first started working with wildfire data. And at the time, this had been the largest wildfire in California. It has since been surpassed probably 8 times, but the Cedar Fire was in San Diego County. And you can see I've extrapolated the area, and then time becomes the height of the sculpture. So I'm showing where the fire is burning at various points in time. It's much too complicated to explain the process of getting to a bronze sculpture from this really complex data, but just to give an overview, there's plaster involved and then a wax that gets burned away, and then bronze gets poured into a form. And then here's an image showing the patina being applied to this bronze sculpture. This one's of the Camp Fire, which was the fire that destroyed the town of Paradise in 2018. So the two kinds of knowledge I really want to be unified in my own practice are the practice and theory, the techne, the episteme, doing and thinking, making and knowing. I'm equally interested in the technical sides of what I'm building and working in a workshop and figuring out how to work with materials as much as I am in the ideas that I'm representing. I created this piece in response to the incredibly complex water rights system in California. This is a commission for an office building in downtown San Francisco. I found a database that has all the permitted water users in California. I filtered it and cleaned it for the largest 1,072 users. And the length of each strand equates to the amount of water, and the color equates to the entity. Such as the government, a corporation, or an individual. Unfortunately, we don't track what that water is being used for. And here's a kind of attempt to show it in the space. I did a few residencies in Alaska and started working with glacier and sea ice data, and particularly this idea of albedo, which is the reflectivity of the surface. And it's a really important factor in studying feedback loops in ocean warming and the loss of sea ice that's happening in the Arctic. So I, after the residency in Alaska, was able to do a residency at a glass casting facility. I started working with these sea ice coverage photographs of the Arctic landscape, digitized them into a 3-dimensional surface, which I could use to make a positive form, and then use that to make a negative mold to cast glass into. And so I have a series of these sea ice inspired photographic imagery pieces that are currently on view at a show called Climate Awakenings in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at Contemporary Craft. That's up through January. And I've got a lot of the other works that I've just talked about on view at another show called Material Mapping, Data-Driven Sculpture by Adrien Segal and Norwood Viviana, which is at the Fuller Craft Museum. If you don't know Norwood Viviana's work, definitely check it out. He's a fantastic person also working in physicalization of data. The last piece I'm going to talk about, I completed, still in progress. So I started last year as a Fulbright scholar in the UK at the University of Dundee, Scotland, and learning about these extratropical storms that happen there that have gotten very powerful, and in partnering with some research scientists who told me a lot of information about how these forms, these cyclone kind of forms start. So this piece is called Cyclogenesis. And here I am in their ceramic studio at the University of Dundee, kind of iterating a clay version of what that cyclogenesis formation looks like, which is really damaging to the landscape in the sense that whole forests have been blown down by the intensity of these storms. So you can see the timber, the massive power that is happening to see wood break like that is just incredible. And I was working with the University of Dundee Botanical Garden, partnered with the curator there to create this earth sculpture based on the cyclogenesis form. They had an area of the garden was a bunch of downed trees from one of the storms. So we chopped up those eucalyptus and actually embedded them inside the sculpture to build up the form. And then the next stage will be to plant this. And so we're choosing plants and figuring out when I can go back and start doing the next stage of the project. Along with the earthwork, I did an installation of a bunch of different objects in different materials I had been creating while I was at the University of Dundee. So here are a few shots, including the model I made of the earthwork, and then some wicker pieces, some wood that I've carved from the botanical garden source, and then a bunch of other little fun experiments. I also teach, which I love, mentoring other people in how to build things. I haven't quite figured out how to marry the building with the data visualization in a teaching context yet, but I'm very interested in going that direction. And this is a group of students I had who are doing a sculptural lighting workshop in Colorado just this past summer. And then this is the piece that's currently on my bench in the woodshop I work in. It's an iteration of the Monterey Bay Canyon, and that's what I'll be going to work on hopefully later today. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Super nice. Adrien, perfect. So just to remind everyone, we have a Slido link below. So people, please feel free to ask questions. And please upvote questions, because sometimes we have so many questions that I'm just taking the mostly democratically upvoted question, because, you know, we're in Switzerland, so that's part of the game. Yeah, so, and the next is Tiziana. So let me start the whole thing. You may say something.
Hello, hi. Hi, everyone. It was a beautiful presentation, Adrien. I loved it.
In October
Okay, hi,
2021, I started having trouble sleeping. At first, I didn't pay much attention to it, thinking it was just a matter of adjusting to my new apartment in London. But after countless sleepless nights, I realized that I needed to investigate the cause of my insomnia. Armed with an application that could capture ambient noises, I recorded every sleep movement and sound across a few weeks of my sleeps. And what I really wanted to know what was the cause of my insomnia. If it was just anxiety, or maybe some external noises disrupting my sleep, or maybe ghosts. And after several weeks of data collection, I took a look at the results and I saw a clear pattern. During the early hours of the morning, when I was still asleep, I heard the noise of the buses coming from the street below my bedroom window. They were the reason I couldn't sleep peacefully. And while the noise wasn't loud enough to fully awaken a person, it was definitely enough to disturb my sleep. And from this observation and data, Morpheus was born. Morpheus is the name of the god of dreams and sleep. And it's also a fusion of art and science that uses the sound data recorded during a night to create a visual representation on paper. Here, each brushstroke and curve on the canvas tells a story, a tale of sound waves moving through times. And the lines shows the amplitude as the ups and downs of sonic vibration. But in the middle of this artwork, a broken circle emerged. And this broken circle is a symbol of my disrupted sleep, with its peak showing towards the early morning, as you can see on the bottom corner of the screen. So raise your hand if you ever had experienced insomnia at least once in your life. But well, you're not alone. In Italy, the country where I'm from, approximately 13.4 million people suffer from insomnia, according to the latest data from the Italian Sleep Medicine Association, which is enough people to fill the Wembley Stadium 128 times. So I couldn't show you this data with a traditional bar chart or a dashboard, but instead I wanted to present the data in a different way, and also I wanted to tell you a story about it. So this work, Morpheus, like many of my creative experimental pieces, aims to make the data contained in an audio file or sound, for example, tangible, like a proper photograph of a moment. The goal is to experience sounds not only through our sense of hearing, but also through our eyes. Similar theories have been explored in the past by artists like Kandinsky and more recently by Brian Eno. Even Freud's psychological theories on sublimation, which shapes unconscious feelings through narrative and representation, touch upon these concepts. And if you want to know more about my process, I'll point you to my TEDx talk, How Sound Data Can Recreate Lost Memories, where I explain the links between sonic data and sublimation in details. So by using sonic data, I started to create photographs depicting everything about my life, from relationships to emotions to even lost images. And we live in a world abundant with data, and it's our responsibility to unlock its potential. So today I'm going to tell you three stories actually, involving data from sound, images, and perfumes. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Tiziana Alocci. I am an Italian designer, and I've been living in London for more than 10 years now. And I spent 10 years, also a little bit more actually, working as an information designer in various design studios, focusing on a wide range of fields, from sustainability to sport, from culture to social causes. I've been freelancing since 2018, and now my work leans more towards the direction of data-driven art, but I carry on working on commercial projects through my own studio, Necessity.inc. And my mission is to make the inaccessible accessible through visual storytelling, data, but also sound, and even art, because I really want to work with the most innovative names to create beautiful and functional experiences that truly touch the art and the mind of people. So now I'm going to show you a quick video to summarize the body of work that I do. And in 2016 and 17, with my ex-colleague Piero Zagami, we co-founded Market Cafe magazine, which is an independent magazine about data visualization. And I just want to spend a couple of words about this project, because in August we launched the issue number 8, which is about digital humanities, and we interviewed people worldwide talking about what they do with data. Every issue is sold out. It's very independent project. It's sold only through our website and independent bookstores, and it's been the world's first independent magazine about data visualization. But also it started as a self-initiated project, and it was what basically helped me to move towards something that I really like and enjoy, which is teaching. And since 2019, I've been teaching data visualization at the MA in data visualization at London College of Communication and also at the Chelsea College of Art. And while I teach data visualization, I always combine my practice experience with design theory. And I also had the pleasure to lecture all around the world, from Mexico to Thailand. And of course, I'm interested in design, but I'm even more interested in people. And that's the secret. We must care more about the people on the other side of the screen than what is displayed on the screen. And this is a great quote from a great book called Good Service. So, but this journey hasn't been easy. When I first moved to London, my English wasn't great. Sometimes articulating concepts and explaining projects in meetings was challenging. So I remember I decided to focus on a kind of universal language made of numbers and images. And I asked myself, how can I communicate data and information in the simplest way possible? So I started using analogies, both spoken and visual, to explain concepts. So something like fast as a train or tall as a 6-story building, and so on. And I made it my superpower. But it didn't take long for me to realize that stories are told to an audience. But very often we publish and design data visualization projects without considering who we are talking to, and especially whether the person we are addressing actually understand the impact of what numbers had on their own lives. In the English language, there is a term that helps us, which is relatable, which is not just a famous Netflix shows, but it means allowing a person to feel they can identify with someone or something. And during the pandemic, I tried to do something similar. I'll show you this quickly as an example, just to put in perspective. There was this news that in Italy, 312,000 people lost their job, and they were women. So I wanted to show how big is this number. And I did that by comparing the number to the capacity, for example, of the largest stadium in Italy or the largest passenger cruise at the time. And the feedback that I received, I shared this on Instagram, the feedback that I received was great. And people told me I never thought about making these analogies, and now I really understand how big numbers are. So we live in a world abundant with data, and it's our responsibility to unlock its potential. In my work, I've made all kinds of traditional data visualization you can possibly imagine, but today I will tell you 3 stories involving data from sound, images, and perfumes to accompany you on this sensory data journey. So let's start with music, because we all relate to music. In 2019, I started collaborating with a record label based in Berlin, and they produce electronic music like techno, made by various DJs. And they discovered my work on Instagram. They got in touch, told me, oh, we really like your work and your style. Can you make a graphic for the cover of record that we are about to release? And I said, yes, I would love to do it. Send me the data. And they told me, but we don't have any data, but we have the music. So I accept the challenge. And back in the time, I was reading a book. And in this book, it was mentioned that in 1912, the British art critic Roger Fry coined the term visual music to describe the work of the painter Kandinsky, who was not only a skilled painter, but also a talented musician. And for him, the emotional power of music provided inspiration for abstract paintings. They used lines, shapes, and colors to create a visual connection between music and visual representation. So I started to do research, data research and visual research, to see what was done before. Visual research is also a very important part of my work. You will notice that 99% of the work that I do feature the shape of a circle. I grew up in Italy. We have an abundance of churches, and a circle is a very recurring architectural element. And so from 2019, we together produced and I designed over 20 different data-driven album covers, and each of these little circle is a cover of a record, a vinyl record, which shows data, sonic data, basically contained in a song of each album. And there is again now another quick video that I want to show you to just to display the variety of the projects. And this was the first cover that I made. It was October 2019. And then I made others until the most recent one that I released it was September, so a few weeks ago. Not with the same record label, but this was a different management. But I was really, really honored to work on the new album called Metallic Spheres in Color, made by The Orb and David Gilmour from Pink Floyd. So beyond images, now let's talk about images, but specifically about tattoos. And tattoos for me are a unique form of personal data. Potentially some of you have at least a tattoo or know someone with a tattoo, but a tattoo is a very old practice that gained particular popularity in the 19th century, especially when convicted criminals in Britain were sent to Australia. And during this long journey, authorities have recorded the numerous meanings and the shapes and designs of tattoos on the convicts, including, and these tattoos were including words of love, hope, pain, friendship, and even religion. But above all, as a voluntary procedure, tattoos provide valuable information about non-elite voices that would otherwise be difficult to find in non-historical datasets. In 2018, I was commissioned by the British Library in London to make 2 artworks for the upcoming exhibition Visualizing Victorian News. And one of the artwork was about reconstructing the lives of criminals through tattoos. So tattoos serve as visual records of stories, of experiences and identities. They hold cultural significance, capturing the narratives of individuals who might not have a voice in historical records, which is really common. But by studying tattoos, we can uncover hidden stories, understand subcultures, and gain insights into the lives of marginalized community. And the voices of marginalized people are always difficult to find in historical dataset. But in this case, one group is an exception because we have a lot of data on individuals convicted through the English criminal justice system in the 19th century. So I use a database, an online database called the Digital Panopticon, which holds the secrets of the past and where thousands of criminal records and the tattoos that tell their stories are stored. And we are talking about something like more than 60,000 tattoos records. And it's a treasure trove of information that paints a picture of a time long gone, but not forgotten. And by bringing together the seemingly separate words of crime and tattoo, we can uncover the hidden narratives of those who have gone before us and give them a voice. And through this data, primarily composed of images and tattoo design, I was able to reconstruct a narrative. For example, I studied the mention of the word tattoo in a selection of British newspapers to discover that it only became a popular topic towards the end of the century, mainly due to extensive coverage of a sensational crime. And this crime was called the Thickborn case, which also has a Wikipedia page if you want to learn more, and involved the alleged death of Roger Thickborn in a shipwreck and the claims of a man named Thomas Castro to be Roger Thickborn. And the case had over 200 witnesses ready, but was only the testimony of one about the distinctive tattoos that the claimant did not have, led to his claim basically to being rejected. So if you want to learn more about the case, which is really fascinating, there is a whole Wikipedia page about it. So last but not least, the third case study is the work that I've done this summer in June about visualizing perfumes. And while I work with the most unusual data set, never before I've been asked to visualize the very essence of perfumes and aromas, and it was very, very exciting for me. So when I started working on this project, one of the main issue was the time constraint. I only had 2 weeks, and the shape of the data, because I had 32 individual data sets, and each data set were made by a lot of columns and rows in the orders of hundreds and hundreds. So I had a lot of data to handle with. So the immediate thought was, I can't do everything manually, and all the works that you've seen so far, they are not coded, so they're done manually, because I'm not a coder, I don't code. So I started to play with processing a little bit, and I was trying to find a shape that could in some way make sense. And I tried different solutions, I tried different iteration. Sometimes I was maybe finding a shape that could be, it could tell a story, it could be interesting. I started then to combine these shapes with Illustrator. Something was vaguely interesting, but it was still very far from what I usually do. Then I remember, of course, I'm not a coder. Maybe I should just, start from square one and trust my process. So I go back to the very beginning. I went to the museum. I looked at some art, and I noticed that there were a lot of references to natures. And then I did some research, and I found out that gardens have been a popular subject in art history, often symbolizing a theme such as life or renewal or growth. And from ancient Egyptian tombs paintings to Renaissance tapestries, gardens have been depicted in various styles and mediums throughout the ages. Many famous artists like Van Gogh or Monet, for example, have also been inspired by gardens and incorporate them into their works. So I started playing with a software that allows you to create network diagrams by playing with some algorithms. And it was very fun and unusual because I never used this software, which is called Gephi, for my project. But I started to see that some shapes resembling the shape of flowers or gardens were appearing almost by magic. And this is one of the discarded options called Garden of Fragrances. So I thought maybe I am on the right path, but I care a lot about the context when I design, and I live in London, and even though London is far from the poetic imaginary of the French countryside, I wanted to capture the invisible threads that bind perfumers and their fragrances, transforming complex data into a visual symphony of lines, notes, and patterns. So I look into nature, and I wanted to replicate nature using data as a creative material to create an olfactory fingerprint. And I finally landed to the concept that was chosen, which is called Scented Connections, which is a series of 32 unique data portraits that embody the network of fragrances and aromas used to create a scent. and inspired by the intricate web of relationships that form the backbone of a fragrance, and by nature's shapes, of course. Each portrait here represents a unique olfactory fingerprint, charting the journey of a fragrance from its creation to its ultimate destination. So this was one of the projects that I like the most, even though I like most of the projects that I do. I'm really grateful for that. But this was very unusual and was the first time that I was working on a sensory data set made of something that is impossible to see and to hear. So last but not least, I just want to nick the last second of your time to do some shameless promotion, because next month I'm launching my very first physical product, which is a limited edition of 10 handmade skateboards featuring my sonic data visualization Victoria Night. So please join the mailing list. Here there is a QR code that you can scan with your phone and join the mailing list to know the date of the launch and see some cool behind the scene and making of each individual board, which is made by hand here in East London, one by one. So that's all for me. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to your question. Thanks again.
Super nice. Tiziana is just away. With also, she's back. Good. Good, it worked. Yeah, so I have seen, thanks a lot. I have seen that people got lazy with questions and upvoting. So please don't leave all the questions to Adrien. We need also questions for Tiziana and of course for Lev, who is now coming up. Also, one last thing, please, if you like the things we do, like this video, comments, share it, subscribe, and so on. So, but now, Lev, it's your 20 minutes. Looking very much forward.
Good afternoon. Is it, I see it's at 12:47, so is it okay to take 20 minutes, or shall I try to do it maybe 15 minutes?
20 minutes is perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
okay.
Just go for the 20 minutes.
Good. All right, thank you. Well, I'll try to maybe get it to 17. All right. So for me, this event feels a bit nostalgic. Forgive me for saying it. I loved seeing work of the generation, and also, even though artistic data visualization, the term which emerges around 2004, 2005, right? So if according to this term, it's been around for 18 years, but the actual work of creative designers doing more experimental visualization begins around 97, 98. So this field is 25 years old. But of course, one of the big differences, if this panel was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it'd probably be all men. So that's one big difference, is that it's nice to see, right, more gender and ethnicity diversity. Having said that, again, allow me to be a bit moody in my presentation, because I started my training in art 50 years ago in 1973 as a teenager in Russia. And then I started working in digital art in 1984. And, when you are in a particular field for a very long time, you have this feeling like you've seen this all. But I do want to remind, people who are new to this, that, as I said, this field of creative data visualization, or what later came to be called data art, begins around 97, 98. Between 2001 and 2004, already like 1/3 of all the top prizes at Transmediale and Ars Electronica are going to this kind of work. The key critical articles about data art and creative data, artistic, what came to be called artistic data visualization, are published around 2005, 2006. And then as the data become more and more available of all kinds, the field really keeps expanding, 2007, 2008. And then for me, it kind of like this heroic period of data visualization art, me personally, it ends around 2012. So I think, I don't see any new intellectual artistic strategies, which emerged in the last 10 years. And of course, today, you can go to ChatGPT and just ask it to write the code and copy the processing. It'll be done. But we do have, we do see new generation of people. We see people exploring new kinds of data, right? We see people working with some very complex material. So it was very, very exciting to see the work of people today. So let me show you a bit what I did. So first of all, just a reminder again that this is not a new thing. So this is a website which looks a bit clunky because it's a 20-year-old website. And this is one of the key projects, which I think historically important to this field, which probably not everybody knows in this audience. And we do have over 170 people watching us on YouTube, which is fantastic. So this is by Martin Wittenberg and Fernando Vegas, History Flow. So exactly 20 years old. I still think it's one of the most interesting and important projects in this field. So we basically took advantage of the fact that Wikipedia has a self-documenting feature, right? You can kind of click on a button in Wikipedia and you see the whole history of all the text, which makes a Wikipedia page and when the text was edited by different people. And we decided to visualize history of Wikipedia pages as a history of controversies. And we took pages which today, right, would be very, very also controversial given what's happening and the war in Israel and of course war in Ukraine. So we took pages like Islam, for example. And this is what we've done. That was again, 20 years ago, so resolution was not as high. And people spend more time doing web projects and less time doing self-promotion, which I think was a good idea. Let me say that. Anyway, so what you have here is visualizations of particular pages where try to make it bigger. We're not even with images left now. So what you have is time on the horizontal axis, kind of going left to right. And then the height of this sort of shape shows you corresponds to the length of a Wikipedia page at any given time. And then the text written by different people is in different colors, right? And we made these creative choices whereby choosing a particular color palette, we showed how particular pages represent a kind of a battle, right? A confrontation between different voices. Somebody comes, somebody raises something, right? So as opposed to this kind of harmonious and traditional encyclopedic idea of encyclopedia, which you see, when you come to Wikipedia, you just see the whole page. But if you take the page apart, right, you see that it's a cacophony with different voices. And also, again, I'm just showing this project just to remind people that this field has been around for 25 years and people have done amazing work. And, being scientists as well as artists, Fernanda and Martin later also published a paper in the major scientific kind of conference for this. Oh, sorry, now I can't find it. Anyway, here it is somewhere. Okay, so but my work, right? So again, I've been in this field for a long time, and I'm very happy that I contributed also my own efforts to development. I think I published the first article on data visualization as art, that was the data visualization in abstraction into Sublime 2002. Later, I published more articles such as what is visualization in 2010. So, first, I'm going to show a few projects from the work of this research lab, which we founded when I was a professor at the University of California, San Diego. Exactly this place where all these fires were happening. We had a condo, when I was a professor, we bought a condo near Del Mar, and we sold it last year because I realized that sooner or later it's just going to burn. So I'm very happy I don't own any property now. Because every year this fires would happen. So thanks for reminding us. So the idea was that in 2005, I saw this explosion of cultural data, right? So the blogs already existed, but in the summer of 2005, it became possible for people to add images to their blogs. The social media was just emerging, where Flickr already existed, but it was not a big presence. And I got this idea, which I kind of called cultural analytics, where we can study both contemporary and also historical visual culture, because museums already started digitizing their holdings and libraries and archives. And now, of course, thousands of museums have digitized millions of art images, but they didn't exist in 2005, but I knew it would come. Right, so I got this idea that, look, if you can combine techniques of data visualization, which already existed as a field, and you already had amazing projects such as what I showed you, History Flow, so we can combine this and maybe other methods from digital arts with this big data, we can create something, right? We can create these new methods to study art history, film history, and these methods can be used by professors and students in classes. But also, when I started, I will show you a project in a second, right? When I started doing this project and exhibiting them and showing them in the context of like design, like Breda Design Museum in Netherlands or Design Biennale in Shanghai, and people say, Lev, what are you doing? Is it science? Is it art and design? I said, you know what? It's all of it. I get money from National Science Foundation. I get science grants to run my lab. I fund postdocs. We collaborate with people from a data visualization scientific lab, and then you invite us to show our work in design and art shows. You treat it as art, so it's both. But for me, this was not a formal answer. What I realized as I was doing it, but I was not only interested in this, let's say, scientific methodology, a kind of digital art history, digital humanities, in creating new methods for academics. What I was interested in is creating new imagery, new symbolic representations of this information age, right? So, and of course, I was maybe fetishizing the density of data, right? And this kind of sublime of these millions of things, which I'll show in a second. So now I look at them and I think, yeah, this was my artworks, and I was hiding, right, in a science lab, and getting money from scientists. But anyway, it's better to work with scientists, which is smart and more organized with art curators anyway. So it's a good way to do art, right? Become scientists. Let me show you some of these projects. Some of you know them. This is like old work 10 years ago. So this is the first project I did with a collaborator who was a PhD student at our university. And he came to me and he said, Lev, let's visualize Instagram, right? So this was the first project to collect and visualize, oh my God, okay, yes, large number of Instagram images. So so we did a few things, right? So we did visualizations where the data was organized in one dimension, right? So this is about 3 days in, let me see what city was it, just a second. I have to check what city was it. Okay, just a moment. Okay, just a second. Okay, let me go here. Tokyo, right? So this is, okay, yeah, here we go. So this is like 3 days in Tokyo. So we basically collected using Instagram, API, which existed at the time, which Instagram later closed because of security concerns, but it was not a concern 10 years ago, right? So we collected all Instagram images with location, which we shared in a 5 by 5 kilometer area in the center of Tokyo. And then I wrote a software called Image Montage, which we've been distributing as open source since 2011. Now you can ask ChatGPT to write the software in a second. Anyway, I wrote this little software. So the software would read the images from a hard drive and reduce them and simply plotted these images in the order in which we shared, right? So basically left to right, top to bottom. And what you see, right, are these kind of wave-like patterns which corresponds to day and night, right? But the night is not completely black because already at the time, people had the ability not only to share images on Instagram, which we took at the second, but also share images on their phone, right? Maybe their vacations, or maybe like some kind of vulgar, island we want to travel to. So every city had a particular shape of day and night. And then, as I said, the reason I think of it as my artworks today, as a data art, is that what I liked about it is that there's a kind of randomness here, right? So every part of this pattern, if you squint your eyes, and you will see this sine wave pattern, but the sine wave pattern is not perfect, because one day people share a bit more, another day people share a bit more a bit early. So what you have is this kind of a randomness, and then of course you can zoom in and you can see the individual images and their content, right? So I also wrote about these images as a kind of democratic documentary, right? As a documentary made by thousands of people, and then of course visualization becomes the instrument which gives meaning to these images, but you can also say it imposes meanings, right? Because by organizing these images, so you can actually zoom in and then you can actually go and download them if you want. So it's I think it's about 6,000 pixels, right? By organizing these images in this particular way, you get the idea that the society, as represented, right, by Instagram sharing, is this kind of like semi-ordered, semi-random organism, and every day is a bit different, right? But of course, if you reduce it to like a sine wave, right? If you further reduce it to vector visualization, you will get a perfect shape as you collect more data, right? Which is what happens in statistics. So we didn't want to do a further reduction, right? We wanted to stay at this level of images and create what I described using the term media visualizations which don't show you the data, visualization which shows you the media. So just show you some few examples from this project. So this and then we did like another layout. So this was another version of image plot which I published, where one axis controls how far the image is from the center, and another axis controls another axis corresponds to the angle. So in this case, for example, the date and time the image was shared, corresponds to the image position, right? So you can go from left to right. So this is 7 days. Now you understand, right, why it looks like this kind of fruit with slices. And then I was trying to figure out what to use, for the distance to the center. And I think I basically use basic computer vision, right? So we measure saturation, again, using little code, which we wrote. And you get average saturation of each image, right? So again, what I like, what I think is beautiful about it, every day is a bit different, right? Some days people share more, some people they share less. In this is 7 days. Actually, it's interesting to show it today. It's 7 days in Tel Aviv, using on the very important day, which is Day of National Remembrance, which is like the biggest, I don't want to call holiday, it's Memorial Day in Israel. And this is the data we collected in 2013. And I'll just show you a bit more. So for example, here you can compare, like this is San Francisco, right? You get one signature, maybe, and then this is Tokyo, this is Bangkok, and we also published articles about it. Anyway, so this is one project. So maybe what I'll do is just show another one. So overall, we did about 45 projects. Most of them we did in the first 2 years, just me and the postdoc. I was the only person with a design art background. So we hired PhD students to help us write the code. I had a postdoc. I would hire my own PhD students because working with big data, it's a bit difficult to do it yourself. Now it's a bit easier. But most of 1,500 visualizations from our lab, you can find in Flickr. Most of them I did myself because I was the one with an art background. And maybe I'll just show briefly. I will show what I want to show. I want to show this one. Yes. I want to show. Just a moment. Where it is? Well, it's not here. Sorry, just a second. So this one is so all visualizations are kind of similar, right? The software reads images from a hard drive, it reduces them to a small size, and then using every existing metadata or the image features, which are measured using basic computer vision software. You can write the code yourself on Python, but I have wrote it using different software. The images are positioned in a space. So this is maybe biggest visualization which we did, and it's amazing because it was 2010. So my code which was not optimized, was running on the basic iMac, and it took like 2 days to render it. So it's 1 million manga pages, right? So we basically found this website which had manga, which manga fans would be translating right into other languages, and we downloaded all of it. So that was like a global manga, and it turns out it was over 1 million pages, corresponding to around 800 manga series. And as you know, manga is one of the most popular forms of culture. And in this visualization, again, here it is. The whole so basically I made it black and white, so I can render it at a larger size, because the software I was using, the largest size I can render would be 2 gigabytes. So this was 20,000 by 20,000 pixels, and we can, and all of it, we make it available on Flickr. We don't sell anything. We are kind of open source. This is what I was advised. So you can download all of it. So we can go here, and here is, I think on Flickr, just to make it reasonable, the largest image is 10K. So you can download it. And so here, for example, you can get the 6,000 by 6,044. It will probably take a while to load, but the images are organized. So here it is. It will take a while to load, but it will load eventually. And the images are organized. We just go here so we can talk about it. The images are organized by standard deviation on the x-axis, but it's not interesting. But what's more interesting is they organize by entropy on the y-axis. And here, I think I have close-ups, so you can see what's kind of going on. So this is the example of a high entropy area. So high entropy means it's hard to predict what the next pixel will be. So this is a manga which is very dense, more work goes into it. Even this is a different part of this cloud, right? So this was the top part, and this is bottom part where the entropy is low. So the style is more poster-like, etc., etc. And maybe I can just take literally 1 second and just to show you what I'm doing now, because I'm looking for advice from everybody. So after doing this work for 15 years, I published a book called Cultural Analytics on MIT Press in 2020. When I felt, okay, I have enough. I have enough of data. Sorry to say this in this context. Just after 15 years, I said I need to do something else. And last year, I realized I want to make single images again, which was amazing, because 10 years ago, if somebody said, Lev, one day you'll be making single images, I said, no way. I only want to work with millions of images, but this is how human mind works. And you can sort of visit now so I have a new website specifically for my new art, starting from last year, although you can also find my drawings going back 45 years. So some people were surprised to find out that I'm a professionally classically trained artist, etc., etc. So this is where I come from. And you can find these images. And this is, of course, both artistic and also partly, let's say, theoretical explorations into the possibilities of AI. All these images are done with Midjourney. Even I usually edit them using the Lightroom. And I have my special kind of tricks to make images which don't look like a typical AI. Like I don't have time to comment upon them, just to show you a few things. You have, for example, things like this. So here my trick is to give it a prompt. So to ask it to make architectural sets or theater sets. So maybe it looks like some animation, sorry, from 1940s or 1950s, right? So the idea is to reduce realism on purpose. So then, the images will not be outdated like a month from now when the Midjourney new version comes out. Yeah, of course, it's also nostalgic. You have this kind of Soviet communist kind of figures, this frozen world. It's also my emotional reaction against the war last year, because many of us felt terrified and frozen at what happened. So now I'm preparing 2 personal exhibitions, which will open in a few weeks in Portugal, and then in 2 months in Seoul, and each exhibition will show about 35 images as prints. So now I'm like into prints, and I just show you again a few things. So I'm doing all those things, right? And they're beautiful, and people want to show them, and I will finish in 30 seconds. But basically, I ultimately feel that this is not quite it, right? Because 15 years ago, I made this experiment, right, and created this lab where we try to figure out new ways to deal with multiplicity of images and the fact that they have this image explosion, and we developed these techniques, which at least in some ways allowed us to visualize thousands or even millions of images, right? And now, now I'm working with AI, and yeah, I can make 400 images in one evening, and like everybody else, I made 16,000 images in 50 months. But I know that I'm only exploring a tiny, tiny, tiny portion of this huge latent space, right, which neural network work. So somehow there should be a way to do different kind of art using these latent networks, not make images one at a time, but to do something else. So what I'm hoping, I don't know how, is I'll be able to marry my previous work, right, in visualizing large image collections, which was the response to explosion, to a quantitative explosion of image culture in around 2005, 2008. But now we have a new explosion because in the last year, people created more images with AI than all the images in history of photography. So while I'm really enjoying making single images, I also feel that maybe this is not ultimately, what I should be doing with media, and I'm not sure what will come next. Thank you so much for the time. Sorry, I hope I didn't went over too much.
That's perfectly okay. Interesting experimental field. Thank you. Super. So we had all the talks. Perfect. I think there could be kind of the party crasher coming in from Basel, London, and Lucerne, just to see them, how they're doing. I have actually a lot. We have more questions than we can answer. But I would say we could start right away with some questions. If the people in Zoom now enter from the other places, it's gonna be okay. Yeah, the first question, which is obviously the first speaker always gets the most questions. Adrien, so we have a good question, which is probably also interesting for everyone, because it's a very general question. And actually it's the community question from Basel. They are asking, the viewers are asking, how do you finance your projects? Do you pitch a concept to someone? So kind of where does the money come from to make a living?
Yeah, I feel like that's always a really big question with art. How do you make a living? A diversified income stream is the simple answer. Each project is different. Public art has a very specific process in the States, involving applying for a proposal, like to submit a proposal using an RFQ system, which is a request for qualifications. You show them your work and hope they choose you to do a proposal for a site. That can be pretty lucrative because they're longer term projects, and there's usually a larger budget for public art, depending on how the project runs. A lot of artists work with a gallery. I've never really had great success doing that because I don't make a consistent flow of similar artworks. So every project's different. Sometimes I sell work directly to clients, which I prefer. So the Monterey Bay sculpture I showed at the very end is for a private client, and I teach on the side. And so any given year or month can look very different for me in terms of income. And I think being an artist just requires you to be okay with having like no pay for like 6 months, and then you get a bunch of money at one time, depending on where your projects are at any given time. So you have to be okay with that unstable insecurity, but it all seems to work out at the end. I've been doing this for 20 years and I've haven't ever, even during COVID, all my public art stuff kept going. So I was able to just shift away from exhibitions and focus more on permanent artworks, and that ability to shift is really important to survival, I think, when it comes to making a living. Yeah.
Thanks. I will also ask the others, just moment. We have here the Bachelor Data Design and Art in Lucerne, who just joined. They're in the upper side of the image. Can you wave, guys? Hey, where are you? We have a delay of 45 seconds. So until you hear me, it's 45 seconds past. They will be the first ones. And the other group there is on the right corner. It's Basel. And we have also, with the black image, because it didn't turn on the camera, we have London there, I guess. It's not that dark there, I guess. Yeah, so okay, cool. Yeah, London went and coming back. Okay, technical issues. Good. Yeah. We see Basel. Okay, it's like it feels like Eurovision contest. Good. Cool. I hope everybody has a good time there. I will join you for the beers in the Basel group afterwards. Good. Yeah. Tiziana, how is the situation for you with financing your projects? Are you pitching the ideas, or do you wait for clients to approach you?
Well, so I don't consider myself a full-time artist. I am an information designer and lecturer. So that's what I mainly do. All the data art that I do, it's something that I would have done anyway. I started to collect data when I was 4 years old, and I always made a lot of things that never left my studio or my apartment. And then only recently, actually last year, I thought maybe, I don't know, someone likes them. So, and that what happened. And I formally started last year with the first collection, which is the Necessity Collection, to sell limited edition prints. And now I'm just enjoying what I would do anyway. Then in my downtime or spare time, I'm always making something. So let's say that I mainly focus on information design as a designer and lecturing, and that's where the money comes. And then at the data art, it's more. I really hope it's going to be one of the main thing that I will do probably in the next 5 to 10 years. But at the moment, I really enjoy to work without the pressure of selling things. And I think, it's quite good to keep it that way for the moment.
Perfect. Lev, you are probably financed by science grants, right?
Well, so I've been so I got my PhD in '93, right? And in the States, so I've been professor in the States since '93, so 30 years. And for first 20 years, I was a professor of art, so including wonderful plays, which I have to say I have to develop. So in the late '90s, it really became one of the top programs for digital art in California. So that was University of California, San Diego, with like really amazing colleagues and amazing research labs. I was able to collaborate. And then 10 years ago, they sort of recruited me for a job in New York, and I decided it's time to move to New York. And they said, Lev, we don't have any computer, we don't have any art, design, media, anything like creative in our university. I should have listened to them, but I didn't pay attention because so we said, okay, but we have to put you somewhere, right? So we can basically put you in the graduate program in art history or computer science. What do you choose? And I thought, well, computer scientists, we're not very cultural people, but we're more democratic than these art historians, right? So now I became professor in the PhD program in computer science. That's what I'm teaching. And basically, the only thing I'm teaching is data visualization. That's what we want. So it's the only class I'm teaching. And I'm kind of bad. I'm actually very bad with classical data visualization. My brain doesn't work in 2D. But, it's a great job. So after 30 years, I mean, I get this nice, American academic paycheck. I only teach one seminar a semester, so 2 hours a week. And since 2020, it was all on Zoom. So me and my wife just, what we're doing is traveling. And, and now I'm, doing my work on my laptop. I was thinking last year that maybe I should become like artist and maybe enter the art world. But after a year, I remembered that, in my opinion, it's a bit childish. It's a bit, these curators, after when you work with academics, so like organized, people do grants, we do research, the art world, it's a bit, from my point of view, it's a bit immature. So I said no. But I'm having these 2 exhibitions, so who knows? In terms of doing work for clients, to be honest, when we started doing this work and visualizing these image collections, and we got invited to by MoMA and other people, and I kind of thought, well, it would be nice to be invited by a real museum, visualize their collection. But I think when we actually came to this work, we actually invited real designers with real studios, which maybe was a good idea, right? Because we never had a real studio, we just research lab. So that's it. Yeah. So you can hate me because I'm completely free to do whatever I want. But the price I had to pay, is to live in America in provincial places for 25 years, at places like Rochester, or Baltimore, which is really not fun. So, but you pay a price, and then one day you have this freedom. So see you guys all in Europe soon. I'm coming. So anyway, that's it.
Cool. Let me know when you're here in Switzerland. Cool.
Okay, sometimes, yes. Is there a reason to come to Switzerland? I don't know. Is there anything to do with it? Just joking.
Okay, good.
Just joking.
A question which is very also upvoted. I mean, it's a question which is returning, and actually I said last time I refused to answer or ask the speakers the question. It's always the question regarding software and kind of how do you do your work. There are 3 questions which are going actually that direction to Tiziana. Maybe just very fast. The first one is that you said you're not a coder, but you still kind of collaborate maybe with others. And also the question what software are you using to create your sound visualizations? Maybe Tiziana has...
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now yeah.
Okay, cool. Sorry, my internet is not great. So that's the most common question that I receive, and the answer is extremely disappointing because I use Excel and Illustrator. When I studied data visualization at Polytechnic of Milan, we didn't have all the softwares or the new technology that we have now, and we used to make all the charts by hand or using Illustrator mainly, and I just got stuck with that. I use some audio softwares, of course, some audio manipulation softwares, but then it's pretty much about working with illustrators. I have a few scripts in Illustrator, so I kind of not hack the software, but kind of customized it. But yeah, it's pretty much Excel, Illustrator, some few other things, but not coding at the moment.
Understood. Let's leave the technical questions. So the other question, which let's ask a question that Lucerne, the bachelors from data design and art, were asking. They were asking something I think very relevant for their studies, and that is, what is the highest amount of data dimensions? So let's say kind of the dimensions that you could incorporate into your data visualizations. So how many dimensions, layers can you, or is the maximum that you work with? Who wants to start?
Okay.
It's open.
Well, can I maybe try? So when I teach my classes, right? When I teach my classes, and I don't teach with more like this, kind of spaghetti stuff, right? I just teach them like basic stuff, like scatter plot. I say, well, basically you can, if you think about color, transparency, size, position, maybe about 7 or 8. But of course, when we get to this more like artistic data visualization, I think you can do a bit more. But ultimately, you can probably do 1,000. You can probably do more if you want. But then, of course, it becomes a piece of art, no longer usable visualization. So I would say to be my safe answer will be 7. But I'm curious what my colleagues will say.
Jenna or Adrian?
I think that's up to the person designing the piece. Yeah, it'd be a good challenge to see how many one could fit in there. I agree. Maybe legibility would be at stake, but if that's not important to you, you just want to layer as much as possible. Go for it. I challenge the group that asked to.
Okay. We will make the connection then.
I just want to say, if you think about modern abstract art, right, like everywhere from Kandinsky, Malevich, Jackson Pollock, I don't know, Goncharova, as a kind of visualization of something, right? Visualization of a world abstract. You can look at all these pieces and say, okay, how many dimensions did they pack here, right? This could be like interesting way to look at history of modern art, and maybe we'll find out some interesting answers. But I agree, this will be a great assignment for for good students. Yeah. Try to
Let's
do more
open
with
it. Hashtag Data Dimensions Challenge.
Yeah.
Good. Let's do that. Good. It's this, Tiziana?
Yeah, I mean, it depends very much about the audience. So you need to know, take in consideration accessibility, the level of data literacy, so know the different layers that you can add to a specific visualization, or maybe sometimes it's just a piece of data art, so you don't have labels, numbers, text, nothing, just a shape. So there are different purposes, and I like the flexibility. So it depends. That's like classic answer.
I just want to add, I show my students examples, right, of data journalism, like Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, Economist, New York Times, and it's mostly bar charts, which means it's basically one. It's basically one. And it's not so many scatter plots, because I think most people, we can't read scatter plot. That's already too complicated. So depending on the audience, I agree, it can be anywhere from 7 to just 1.
Yeah.
And one often is a good idea.
But let's define it. Art can ask or can go for new frontiers and new questions and experiments, right? So there's more freedom. Cool. I'm in it. Good. So let us, we have 3 more minutes. Let me just see, technical. Okay, that's actually an interesting one. That's more like a open question. I would love to find more exhibitions and workshops on data and art, but I never know how to find them. Does anyone know a good community or resource for data art? Yeah, difficult question.
Can I try?
Yeah.
So in a way, yeah, it was easier 15 years ago when community was very small, right? This is in fact, we had communities. Now it's can be anywhere. So I don't know. I think one thing I would do is just search for recent exhibitions.
Yeah.
Because just look for the last 5 years, because there are exhibitions. And when you see who's shown where, when you can follow your work. In terms of beautiful data visualization, I always recommend students to look at Pinterest. For some reason, Pinterest seems to have better work than anywhere else, but that's more beautiful, always beautiful data visualization. But I think for data art, I would just look for exhibitions with terms like data art or artistic data visualization, and that's I don't know where's or maybe maybe a good Wikipedia page. I'm not sure. Usually, that's my recommendation. So
okay.
If I may add another recommendation, maybe slightly unpopular, books. As Lev mentioned, most of the great data art is from 15 years ago. And I remember when I studied it.
You remember when you
review
studied?
old books and publications featuring a lot of works. So books as well, because maybe the websites are not updated, they're not accessible anymore, they're not even online anymore, but books are still available.
Maybe I can say one thing. You know, my presentation, right, was a bit nostalgic and even negative, saying like, well, good old days. But there is a reason for this. Because, you know, I think what happened is that this field, when it was developing in 2000, we were doing visualization for the screen, right? And, you know, you have more pixels. And then at the end of 2000, all the design, right, everybody starts doing design for this. And this, in a certain sense, it kind of kills the field. Meaning, I think, again, I can be wrong, but I haven't seen incredible explosion innovation in this field after that moment, because I think people just try to figure out how to fit this visualization, right, into the screen. And while there are more exhibition opportunities and you're doing data sculptures and you're doing prints, it's true. But for designers, because I think innovation requires lots of people doing something, most designers just started working for this thing. And this is, so I'm waiting for phones to die, or phones become like some kind of big surfaces, right? Something we see inside movies, and then maybe this field will continue to develop more dynamically. But I have to agree, sorry to say, but I do feel sometimes the best works like maybe from 10 years ago, because as I said, this is not the best medium for, I mean, it's a good medium for very minimalist data visualization, but not really, you know, I would prefer the screen or the sculpture or what you're doing. So we kind of have to wait for this thing to die. I'm sorry for being so like, you know, like pessimistic. Please contradict me, but that's what I think. You know, it's kind of like the technology kind of was working against us. I think the last 12, 30 years.
Interesting. Adrien, what do you think? Does the phone have to die?
Well,
we just have to not design for the phone. I don't get gratification from working around my computer all day. I need to be in a physical space and my hands in a bucket of mud. You know, like I feel good at the end of the day when I've been building something. I don't get that gratification when I'm on a screen all day. So me personally, I've had to make this decision to so I don't design for that. Such as CAD modeling and CNC milling and that kind of thing. But we got to think outside of digital space if you're talking about art specifically. And I would recommend that website I plugged earlier, dataviz.org, is a great place to start if you want to see some more tangible representations. And then the other recommendation I'd say just for that question was, I think the information is beautiful. David Endless is happening right now, and they have a specific category that's for art, not so much for pragmatic data visualizations. And I think that category, you could probably find some more resources for the more art-focused data people. But we are a niche. It's such a beautiful small world, and it's so beautiful that people come from this field from so many different directions. It really is a bridge. And I've found that to be a really wonderful part of this community. Having a furniture design background, I've met people doing human-computer interaction, cognitive behavioral studies, and they all kind of intersect in this really weird, cool space. So that's the part of this kind of niche that I love. And once you get tapped into it, you can kind of meet other people and build the community.
Very nice. I would leave that. It's like the perfect ending, the perfect niche with interdisciplinary people all loving data and kind of experimentation and physical space also. Super nice.
And the fact that it is a niche, this is beautiful because, you know, there's too much of everything today. So if you can find a niche, it's so wonderful to feel that you're part of a niche. It's best. It's the best advice I would say. Find a niche and stick to it. And make sure, and don't tell everybody so it stays kind of small.
Because it's too big then.
Because it's like, metaverse is like some amorphous monster, right? Niche is beautiful. Small is beautiful. It's
perfect. Thank you. Thank you. So the speakers, please stay in Zoom. I'm closing now the live channel. So we are saying goodbye to everyone. Thanks to everybody who joined. It was really nice. Thank you. So we're out.